As diplomatic efforts to end the war in Ukraine continue, the European Commission has proposed using controversial emergency powers to provide funding to Kyiv using frozen Russian assets worth up to €210 billion. The plan would prevent countries like Hungary from blocking it. The Commission has warned that Ukraine will run out of cash by the middle of next year if the war continues. NATO leader Mark Rutte said today that only US President Donald Trump can break the deadlock.
NATO foreign ministers taking stock of the latest diplomatic manoeuvres, including yesterday's remark by Vladimir Putin that if Europe wanted war, Russia was ready. A 28-point peace plan that seemed to heavily favour Moscow has been adapted to better reflect Ukraine's and Europe's red lines. But that seems to have found little favour so far with the Kremlin. There is growing disquiet that NATO and Europe continue to be sidelined.
We must actually decide what we are going to do in Europe. Putin cannot decide over us. And as well, US cannot make decisions instead of us.
Yet, following the meeting, the NATO Secretary-General praised the US President's efforts.
There is only one person in the whole world who was able to break the deadlock when it comes to the war in Ukraine. And that is the American President, Donald J. Trump. And he did. He started in February to get engaged, and he is engaged up to and including today.
Not far from the NATO meeting, the European Commission was producing a legal text that could see up to €210 billion in immobilised Russian assets used to support Ukraine financially and militarily for the next number of years.
We all know that we can never match the sacrifice of the Ukrainian people, but what we can match is their stamina, their resolve, their staying power. And we can equip them with the means to defend themselves and to lead peace negotiations from a position of strength.
But Belgium, which hosts most of the immobilised assets through the Euroclear depository, remains hostile to the proposal.
We have the frustrating feeling of not having been heard. Our concerns are being downplayed. The text the Commission will table today do not address our concerns in a satisfactory manner.
NATO member states have committed to €4 billion in extra weapon sales to Ukraine, mindful that the US is now tapering off its support and that those weapons will have been American-made.
And Tony is standing by for us now. So, Tony, a controversial move on behalf of the EU. What's the reaction so far tonight?
Well, so far the Belgian government have come out and said they're not reassured by this legal text. Now, just to remind people, the reason why Belgium is central here is that about €190 billion of the Russian assets that were frozen days after the invasion are held in Euroclear, which is a Belgian securities depository. And Belgium is saying essentially that if that money is converted into what's called a reparations loan to Ukraine and Russia makes a successful legal bid to challenge that in an international court, then Belgium would potentially be on the hook for a huge amount of money. Now, the Commission has insisted time and again that certainly as long as the EU sanctions are in place, any arbitral decision in any court is not binding on the European Union because of those sanctions. Now, I suppose the contested part of today's move is that the EU would use a particular provision of the EU treaties to switch it away from unanimity and over to a weighted majority. In other words, there would be no possibility for a country like Hungary to overturn EU sanctions so that they would stay in place for as long as Russia doesn't repay Ukraine or make reparations for its invasion. Now, this is a very complicated legal area. It's very controversial. And of course, this is just a legal proposal today from the European Commission. It will, of course, go to member states and it'll be central to a key meeting of EU leaders here in Brussels in a couple of weeks' time.
Tony in Brussels, thank you.